Although we typically focus on divorce and paternity cases, sometimes we get cases that involve an order of protection. In this video, I'm going to explain to you some of the key differences between criminal orders of protection, civil orders of protection, and some other options that you may not be familiar with. There are essentially four different ways that you can receive protection from the courts. The first is a criminal order of protection that has the highest burden of proof and offers the most protection. The next two are essentially the same thing. They just involve different people. One is a civil no contact order, and then you have a civil order of protection. Finally, there's a mutual restraining order. In this video, I'm going to explain those differences. Now, before we go any further, I want to first address the civil no contact order. That's not something that we typically deal with in our office because it's a special civil order of protection for people that don't have any sort of relationship. They weren't in any sort of romantic relationship. They're not married. They're not husband and wife. They're not mother or father. They're essentially people that don't have a relationship protected by the Civil Order of Protection Act. Could be a coworker, students, something along those lines. Now, each one of these tools are going to get you kind of the same result, meaning someone's not going to be bothering you anymore through the court system. It's really important that you understand the difference between these. And really one of the biggest things you want to focus on is how these get started. So let's talk about a criminal order of protection. A criminal order of protection involves usually a crime that's happened. And in this situation, probably the police are involved and the prosecutor. They are going to be the ones that initiate this action and are going to bring it before a criminal judge. A civil no contact order or a civil order of protection or a mutual restraining order are going to be done in the civil courts. They can be initiated by anyone. You can do it on your own. You can hire an attorney. So it's really important to understand that the difference between the two, between the criminal and the civil side, is that in the criminal, you're going to have a prosecutor involved. In the civil side, you can do it on your own. Now, another difference between the criminal and the civil, in the criminal matter, the defendant, well, hopefully not you, may have to actually post a money bond or put something else up as well, meaning that if they violate the order of protection, not only are they facing a criminal charge, but they could lose their bond as well. Now, my office, we don't handle criminal things. So if any of your case involves the need of a prosecutor or the police and is not involved in a divorce, we highly recommend that you go speak to the police and the prosecutor immediately. But if there's something we can help you with involved in the civil matter, I'll go ahead and explain that next. Now, as I mentioned, when it comes to civil orders of protection, that's something that you can do on your own, or you can get the help of an attorney. Now, you might be saying, why should I do civil versus criminal? Well, in many ways, it really depends upon what level of protection you're seeking. With a criminal order of protection, you're going to be getting the highest level of protection available under the law, but you also have the higher burden of proof. You've probably seen shows where you hear about beyond a reasonable doubt. In a criminal case, you're going to need to prove things to that level. In a civil case, there's slightly less burden of proof, but you are still offered the protections of the law. Now, I know I previously mentioned a civil no contact order and a civil order of protection. Let me quickly explain the difference between the two. A civil order of protection involves people that have a relationship. Typically, we're talking about a domestic relationship. Could be husband and wife, mother and child, any other family members or protected people. A civil no contact order essentially protects everybody else. Think maybe coworkers, maybe students in class, or people that really don't have the relationship, but they need to be protected from somebody that might be stalking them or harassing them. Now, before we get into some of the different types of orders of protection, I want to take a moment and stress something that's very important. Orders of protection are to be taken very seriously. You're going to be getting the police involved and potentially the courts in ongoing actions. They should not be taken lightly. You should not be using this for leverage in a divorce case or anything like that. If that's what you're seeking to do, I can tell you right off the bat, we're not the right firm for you. It's also important to think of some other potential consequences. An order of protection can have a dramatic impact on some jobs. For example, someone that works as a teacher or in daycare. Now, I'm not by any means saying that you should protect your ex, but it is something that you need to be thinking about. And perhaps there are other methods of law and protection available to you that get you the result you're wanting without destroying their career. Now, if you have an order of protection, there are essentially 3 different names for the order of protection. Each one has its own significance. Now, the first order of protection is an emergency order of protection. That happens when you go into court, and it's usually done ex parte, which means only one side is there. You go into court, you tell the judge everything that happened and why you're seeking the protection. If the judge says, based upon what you've given him or her, they're going to go ahead and grant an emergency order of protection. Now, that will last for a very short period of time. And basically what it does is it forces the other person to stay away from you on that short-term basis. You may include your children. You don't have to include your children. You should really focus on whether or not they need the order of protection or not. However, it's really important to understand that if an emergency order of protection is granted, do not in any way try and reach out to the other side. You can't use an order of protection as a sword and a shield. Now, once you have your emergency order of protection in place, you will be granted some peace and quiet for a very short period of time until there's a full hearing. Now, the next type of order of protection is what we call an interim order of protection. Essentially, interim means it's in between 2 things. So you've got the emergency, and then at the end, we've got plenary. A plenary order of protection is when both sides have now had their opportunity to present evidence to the judge. So both sides can be heard this time. The judge can hear from both parties and ultimately decide whether or not the petitioner, the person who filed, needs protection from the other side. If the judge grants the order of protection after a full hearing, it's what we call a plenary order of protection, and that can last for up to 2 years. After that 2 years, you can actually reapply to the court and ask to continue it, or you can simply let it lapse. Now we go back to that interim. Basically, what we're saying is we're not ready for a full hearing on the plenary, but enough time has gone past the emergency. So this is the interim in between the time we had the emergency and now when we're having the plenary hearing. Now let's talk about the last option available to you. We've previously talked about a criminal order of protection. Then we talked about civil order of protection and a no contact. Now what we're talking about is a mutual restraining order. This has the lowest level of protection, but it might get you the same result. We often recommend this when people are willing to comply with the law. They listen to orders, they listen to rules. Now, what this does is it basically creates a court order where it outlines what a party can do and can't do. In this situation, you can create rules that say, you can only contact me, for example, to talk about the children. Anything else is a violation of this order. And if they violate the order, you can take them back to court and the judge will deal with them. Now, this can often provide you that protection you need. However, there is a drawback. If you have a civil order of protection and your ex does something they're not supposed to, you can call the police and the police will take them away. They violated an order of protection. That in and of itself is something they can be arrested for. On the other hand, with a mutual order of protection or mutual restraining order, if they violate it, the police are not able to help enforce it. You have to go back to the court and ask the judge to do it. Again, there's a lot of pros and cons to each remedy here, and it's hard to say what's best for you. It's really important in a situation like this that you have good counsel, somebody that knows you, your facts, and the law, so they can provide you a recommendation for your situation. I know we covered a lot in this video, and there's a lot of information to take in. It's impossible for me to give you every possible scenario. So if you're in this situation, it's important to find someone that you trust and to speak with them about your options. If you would like our help, we'd be honored to help you.